Hello, friends of Geek Questions. So, it's been mentioned a couple of times by a couple of people. I can't remember who. I think it was Lord Prussian, but it might have been that bounder Bobby Can, but I can't quite remember. For me to make a video about my letter carving, my letter cut. Now, I've been wanting for years to make a series of videos about my lettering. I've got lots of ideas, and I thought this could be quite a good idea just to do a rough one as a tester, just so I can have a look at things like some camera angles and whatever. Yeah. So I thought I'd make one that maybe some of you might find interesting. You know, it's going to be quite long. It might be half an hour long. I don't know. It might not be as long as that, but it might be something like half an hour long. And you know, if you're interested, that's great. If you're not interested, don't have to watch it. Doesn't matter. But I'm going to go through all the phases that I do in my letter carving, and I'm just going to waffle and I'm going to do it, and we'll see what happens. And this is going to be a one-take wonder, so that's the way it goes. So we start off here, right? Now, I mean, what can you see at the moment? You can't really see anything. All you can see is this bit of stone. Now, hello. This stone is upright. I always work upright when I do it, for various reasons. It's more comfortable standing up rather than being stooped over a stone and doing it from the top. So it's a much more comfortable position, and it's a much better position to be able to see your work, because you're looking at it directly as you would if it was, say, a headstone or a plaque on the wall. You're seeing it how it is. You're seeing all the perspectives, and you're getting a very true likeness of what you're doing. Plus, all the waste just falls away rather than getting stuck in what you're doing. I always try and work upright if I can. Now, this stone here kind of looks like a funny colour. This is actually blue. This is actually like this, right? But on this stone, if I can, and I just happen to find this stone, it's a trash bit stone, I tend to put some paint on it. So I put some poster paint on this to help me see when I cut. Because when I'm cutting into the stone of this blue stuff, it's very hard to, there's not much colour difference between the cut and the stone. So it's very hard to really see your edges and your lines and things. Whereas when you paint it, it makes it, you can actually really see your edges and your lines. And then once I've carved the letter, I'll remove the paint, and then we're left with the thing. Now this is a pretty rough old piece of stone. This is only very roughly sort of grinded down, so it's not going to be. This isn't going to be the best letter I've ever made, because normally I'd smooth the stone off a lot more, but it gives you an idea. And there's also, because I'm making this video and I'm going to do it as a bit of a demonstration, I know that I'm not going to make the best letter that I've ever done, because that's what happens, isn't it? You get on show and you fluff it up. Anyway, so let's talk about it. So now I draw all my lettering by hand when I can. Sometimes I'll do printouts if I'm doing a crappy job, or someone can't afford to pay me the going rates, or they just want something quick and cheap. I might print it out and trace it on, but usually I draw my lettering by hand. So I've drawn 3 lines. I've drawn the top line and the bottom line and a middle line, and that is kind of all we need to be able to do our lettering, because all the lettering is in my head, so I'm going to draw and carve a letter R. Now I'm going to do that because it's got an upright stroke, it's got an angled stroke, and it's got a bit of a curved stroke, so you can see all the aspects of what's happening. Now, I use pencil. This is a 10H pencil, so it's a very hard pencil. And unless I'm doing a very special job that requires a particular sort of aspect to the lettering, I tend to just draw my lettering out, and it's different every time. It's sort of, you know, it changes every time. So my mood will change it, or how I kind of feel will change it, and it generally tends to be quite an organic process, you know. And there's many philosophies towards lettering. Some people would draw them, you know, very mechanically using drawing instruments and things like this, mathematically. Some people would use brushes. They'd use a brush and paint it on. Don't do it. I use a pencil. This is a traditional British way of doing it. And don't know what I was saying. So this is how I'd normally start. Right. So let's get in the middle of the shot. Where's the middle of the shot? It's about here, isn't it? Right. So I don't know if you'll be able to see this now. So now there's a thing that's called. It's like an element. It's called refinement. This was what I was taught. So you're constantly refining things. So you know, at each stage, I'm doing this. I will refine. So it starts off pretty rough, and I'll change things, and slowly I'll bend and warp the thing into the shape that I want. So here I'm just drawing some very basic lines for the upright of my R. Now, can you even see those? I don't suppose you can, but that's because I'm doing it very lightly. But it will become clearer because I'll darken them up. Now, so let me. You know, I'm just going to talk my thoughts on what I do. So. What I've got here, I've got the top and the bottom and the middle line. Right, so now, when you're drawing these lines for lettering, you don't want, you know, we've all seen, you know, lettering like this with the sort of pointy serifs and things like that. Is that on the shot? Not really. But so there's the philosophy. So these lines, you know, they come out of nowhere. They come out of space, and they come onto the stone, and they kind of become reality. You know, as you draw them. This is just the philosophy. Now, I'm putting ever such a slight. It's called entasis. It's the thing that you would get in like Greek columns on the temples and things, where these lines are not straight. They're ever so slightly wasted around the middle, and that makes them look straight. If I actually drew them straight, they would look bulged like this. So this is called entasis. So we come out from the top of the line, and we very, very quickly curl round, and we come into kind of straight, but just with ever such a slight curve, and it comes round and disappears back into this baseline. I'm going to just be waffling. I'm going to sound stupid. I'm not being pretentious or anything. This is reality. And then I draw the serifs on now. The serifs, these are the pointy bits at the end. Now this always has to be one continuous line. It's never a straight line with two bendy bits on the end. It's got to be one continuous line. And if you can imagine this line coming to the serif, and then the imaginary line is always coming back inside, like this circle. This is an educational video. It's better than watching a playthrough of art mode. This is an education. So what we do, so this reaches a point where the actual point doesn't go back up, but it just suggests it goes back up. Just infinitesimally, it's a suggestion. It doesn't actually do it. And the same here. Now, so that is the upright of my R. It's starting to take shape. Now, I have to think of the rest of the R. So now this is where I do my refinement. So I'm just making little marks. You won't be able to see them. Now, I know the shape of the R in my head. but it's always subtly different. So I'm just, I'm doing very fine marks to kind of see where I'm at. Each time I put a mark down, it's a refining process. Now we dip it just under the line here, just dips ever so slightly, goes up here. This is the shape of a Roman capital R. And it goes up, and then it starts to widen out here. So this is our bowl. This is the bowl of our counter. It's called, the space in this R is called a counter. And this is coming down. And I'm just, so I'm doing this. And I'm constantly making decisions. Do I like it? How do I want to change it? And it's just taking shape. So this R is going to be different to every other R I've ever drawn. It'll have similarities to others, of course, but it's going to be different. That's the beauty of drawing lettering by hand. Is there's not, when you get a printout on a computer, the lettering's dead. Everything's the same. Every R is the same as every other R in that typeface. Whereas here, this R is actually the R that I've created at this moment. It all sounds very arty, but it is. It is, it's arty-farty, but that's what makes good lettering. So I'm starting to look at this. Yeah, can you see that? I don't know if you can. Ah, Jesus, you can see it. Right, it's all going to be slightly odd because the camera's at a weird tilted angle to make it look like it's straight, so you're going to lose something on perspective. But right, so I'm looking at this and already I can see I don't like some of these shapes that I've got here. This isn't nice, so I'm going to rub it out and I'm going to refine it. And I actually want, how I was taught was the bowl of the R, it's like a pregnant woman's belly. That's the shape of it, for a Roman capital. Obviously in different typefaces, those rules won't apply. But when I was taught this kind of stuff, I was taught what you do is you learn the rules and then you never apply them. You break them all the time. Now, so I don't like the leg of this. So these I'm just maybe putting in some, there's something about that leg I don't like. Now this way is where it gets difficult, because if you see something you don't like, you've got to work out why you don't like it. So I'm just slightly thinner at the top to how it is at the base here. That's a style of mine. I quite like it. And we're going down here. This point just ever so slightly breaks the baseline because it's a point. This is an optical thing. Little points break the baseline. So the top of a pointy A has to break the top line. Or the circles, they have to break the top line, otherwise they look too small. It's all about optical illusions, or not optical illusions as such, but optical effects. Now, I'm looking at that. It's starting to take shape. I'd normally do this a lot quicker than this, but I'm just taking my time. Don't like the way this is curving now. So I just thought bring that down a bit more here and widen it out quicker. Let's try and get it into a shape I like. And then actually we'll take this down like this. That's a bit better. That's a bit better. Now, what are we talking about? What are things to consider here? Now, we consider the width of the thick stroke. This here is a thick stroke. So we're considering the width of the thick stroke, and we've got thin strokes. These are the widths of the thin strokes, these. And then we have the width of the round stroke. Now, these, the width of the round stroke is always a little bit wider than the width of the upright stroke, the thick stroke. Again, it's just optical because it's circles. And these thin bits, because they're part of the circle, because they're part of the circle bit, these would always be thinner than what your regular thin stroke would be, say, on an E. So if you have an E coming down here and you have your thick stroke like this, and you're coming into a thin stroke, you know, again, the thick and thin strokes can be whatever thing you want. But but when you've drawn a letter, so you know, let's take this E. You know, you could get a little piece of paper. It's just a little piece of paper, right? And you could mark off how thick your thick stroke is. Can you see it? No, where's my thing? There. That's how thick the thick stroke is. And then you can use this, how thick your thin stroke is. That's my thin stroke and my thick stroke. And then you know that the round strokes have to be slightly thicker than the thick stroke. Now, with this simple thing, with this simple little thing here, you can create the whole alphabet just on one letter that you've drawn. Normally you draw an O and an H would be the ones that you draw to make an alphabet, but this is all you need. This has got your thin strokes, your thick strokes and your round strokes. You know, so I can go onto here and I've marked off, well, I can't use that, so I did that for my E, but right, so I can mark off this R, that's my thick stroke, and I can offer this up against my round stroke, and I can see that my round stroke is ever so slightly thicker, so I think I've got my round stroke kind of the right kind of size. Here I've got this is slightly thinner than my thick stroke, which is what I wanted, and it's going thicker than my thick stroke because that's just an aesthetic I like. So I can generate with this unique R that I've drawn, I can now generate a whole alphabet that will, you know, be complementary to each other. This, you know, this is called a ticker. This thing, oh, it's not very hard for me to put it on the camera. It's called a ticker, and I just love the fact that's all you need to create an alphabet. And it's like, you know, if you saw an alphabet that you liked somewhere and you wanted to recreate it exactly. So say sometimes I might get a commission and they've seen a nice alphabet on a headstone or something. They say, I want that exact thing. I can go along with one of these, take a few marks like this, and I can recreate that whole alphabet. You know, I could do things like I could mark the width of counters on it. I could mark, you know, the entire width of a letter E. And just with these marks I can completely recreate alphabets. Exactly. Bored yet? Stick with it. So, now, I have drawn this very, you know, to some degree now. It's not perfect, but in doing this, these are only guidelines. When I come to carve it is when I'll make all the final decisions about the sizes and the looks. These are guidelines. When I carve it, I'm not going to stick religiously to these lines. You know, I'll get close to the lines and then I'll get rid of all the lines. Maybe if it all works, I'm not quite sure how this one's going to come out, and then I will make all the final decisions with the chisel and by an eye. So that is me drawing the letter. So let's get on. I'm going to carve this letter now. Now I use. Let's get these in. These are tungsten tipped chisels. And they're steel chisels with a tungsten tip. And why? Because the tungsten just keeps its edge longer. And then I use this, it's called a letter cutter's dummy hammer, and it's round. Now, I don't quite know how to show you why it's round on this, because you're not really going to see it in the shot. But let me see. So, let me explain. So, I'm I'm trying to look at the phone while I'm doing this. So I'm going to use the chisel to sort of be carving up here and carving up here, and that's fine. But when I go around these round strokes, I'm going to be carving round like this. So you're going from all angles. You need to be able to go from all angles. And sometimes I'll be hitting the chisel bump, bump, bump this way, but sometimes I'm going to be hitting it bump, bump, bump this way. And what this round hammer does means that whatever angle I'm hitting, I can hit the chisel like bam, bam, bam. I can hit it to the left there, or bam, bam, bam. I can hit it to the right, or I can hit it up or down. Any angle. So that's why it's round. That's what I'll be using. I sounded like a bloody university lecturer. I'm not meaning to, but I'm not thinking about what I'm doing here. I'm just talking. Right, so now this is a very hard limestone. This is Kilkenny limestone that I'm carving in there. Now, depending on the stones you're carving in, you use different techniques. Yeah, and this is not my favourite stone by any means. It's just the most common stone to use in Ireland. That's why I use it. Slate is the best stone. You get the best detail and everything. So slate looks absolutely magic, and it lasts forever. Well, not forever, but it's the longer lasting. It holds inscriptions for centuries. Slate, whereas this, in 150, 200 years time, depending on how big the letters are, but the inscriptions will start fading. I mean, if you go into a cemetery and look at limestone headstone from 1800, they're not easy to read. So now, again, I'm going to carve this now. So we've got thin strokes and thick strokes. And the first thing you always do is you carve the thin strokes. So if I was carving this E, I'd carve these 3 thin strokes, and then I'd carve the thick stroke that goes through them. And it's not particularly obvious why, but it's because where the strokes meet, you're less likely to burst stone out by carving through a thin stroke than carving a thin stroke into a thick stroke. Do you understand? Probably not, but you'll see. So, I'm going to start here. Now, I hope you can see, because really I should be filming this in the daylight, but I'm just trying this at night. I don't know what this is going to come out like. So, this is a technique called chasing. Now, I've carved a line through there. Now, what that line does, that line doesn't have to, as long as it's within my drawn lines, it doesn't really matter what it's like. That's just working as a fire break. So when I start carving on the other side, the stone won't shatter beyond this line. It's like a safety measure. Now, the idea of what I'm doing is I'm trying to cut a V cut into these letters, So the profile, the cross section is a V. So now I go on the other side, and just ever so carefully. I'm not going to bugger it up because I'm talking. And I'm going to have to talk quite loudly now because I'm doing. It's constant. Now, so I'm not being religious to my line. I'm keeping just inside my line. And then I come back onto the other side. And I've gone halfway into this thick stroke. Really, I should have done a much bolder letter. Hopefully you can see this. The quality is really crap. I mean, I should do this during the day. Now you can see here, because I'm going round, I'm going to have to do all these. They're called backhand strokes. So I'm just carving this fire break. And here, and then I go to here, which will be the deepest point. As you get the 2 V's, as this becomes a V profile, here becomes the deepest point in the letter. So I take this into the deepest point. Now, I'm afraid I can't help this, but I'm going to get in the way of the camera here because I have to do this. Oh, Jesus, I can't see what I'm doing because I'm in the way of my own shadow. And now what I'm doing here, I'm just removing waste. I'm keeping inside the line. I'm just removing Now that's a chopping technique where I'm chopping much more into the stone. And now I'm going to go back to a little chasing technique here. See how I am? Come in a bit, and then I'm going to take this out to the very edge of the serif. You can see that, can't you? Right, and then I would do the same here. So again, now you can see how I'm doing a backhand stroke. It's quite difficult working on the upright, but it's ultimately superior. And again, all I'm doing here is I'm just removing waste. You know, I'm getting the basic form. But this is the thing about refining. Each time I do one of these passes, I'm refining what I'm doing. So, I don't know if you can see that. Now, so I've kind of done 2 passes and there's all this waste in the middle now. So I'll come along here and I'll try and get rid of some of this waste. And then here. Now I will now get my, this chisel is my sharp chisel. It's you know, I put it at a slightly more acute angle up here than that green one. That little one I was using was a steeper angle because I'm bashing the stone a bit harder. So this is a finer one now where I can start thinking about getting a bit more accurate and making it all a bit more tidy. I've been working on, you know, trying to get my curves a bit smoother. But again, this is by no means my final. This is by no means my final finish. I'm just refining it one more stage. You do one side, so I've done the outside, now I'll do the inside. You do one side and the inside, and as the V gets bigger, as the V gets wider, the V gets deeper. So again, I can, you know, so I'm looking at this, I can see that curves are all a bit dodgy. So I'll probably go again. I think, okay, this needs to be a little bit thicker still. I'll just go again. So what I'm trying to do here, just out of interest, is I'm trying to make the thick part of this bowl, not here, halfway. I'm trying to make it up here at this angle. And that gives the circle weight. You know, it's like when you see an O and the counter is off to the side like this. That's called the weight of the letter, the curve, the weight of the curve, whatever you want to call it. I don't really know the technical terms very well. But again, you know, so I'm looking here and I can see this curve here is not very nice. So I just so I'm making the final decisions with the chisel. And I've made a bit of a mess of that. But that's it. Now one thing I always get asked if I'm doing demonstrations or a show or something like that is what do you do if you make a mistake? That's a very good question. The answer is you don't make a mistake. Okay, that's a bit of a stupid answer. That is the answer. You don't make mistakes. But if you do make a mistake, because as you can see, I'm kind of just nibbling at the stone at these stages. I'm not taking out, if I make a mistake, it's not going to be a big one, and I can adjust it. So let's say I was cutting there, and I take a bit of a chunk outside because I've done a poor strike on the chisel or something. I can just ease the circle off a bit more, change it, or make it, widen the stroke on the inside to get rid of it. There's all kinds of, if I made mistakes where bits have chipped out, I'd subtly change the shape of the letter. If you really scrutinise the letter, you'd notice, but to the average punter passing by, they're not going to notice, are they? A letter cutter might. Right, now, how does that look on the screen? Looks crap on the screen, looks much nicer in real life. It's because of the light. But anyway, so I've done that bit enough. I haven't finished it. I'll come back to it, but I'm going to do the rest of the letter. So again, I start at the very tip of the serif, come in gently, head into the deepest point. Oh Jesus, it's not very sharp. Head into the deepest point of the stroke and bang up the middle. That's my fire break. And then I can come in here. I never go back to the very start of the serif. You only ever go there once. Just inside the line. And I'm just getting rid of waste. So I've cut that on one side with a load of waste in the middle. Cut just inside here on the ends of these strokes are called the terminal planes. On the end of the terminal plane, and then we get that over here, and right, so that's my waste removal. Then I'd get rid of this waste. Now, in fact, I'll probably come to a different chisel. Right, now this is, so I chased up the line, that's one technique. Chasing you would use in softer stones, generally, where you're going up like this, and you're going from the inside to the outside, because each time you go up, the V gets wider. That's chasing. So I chased that first line up, and then I chopped out, that's chopping, the, rough bit of waste. And now I do something called routing to really get rid of that waste, which is what it's just something where you hold the chisel very lightly, and it just bounces back into the hand, and you just get rid of the waste. So that's that waste gone. Now I can think about being a bit more refined. So I get my sharp chisel, and now I'm coming up a bit closer to the line. I don't know if you can see this, I've got no idea if I'm in the way of the camera or not. That's why it's a good idea for me to do this, to make this as a little bit of a test run. I'm coming down there. Ding! Right. Here's a classic thing. I don't know if you can see that. I don't know if it's on there because I've got a cable tie over my phone holding it to the tripod. But I've done a missed shot and I've made a little chip out here. Now, this stone is quite a chippy stone. And also, this rough bit of stone, this is second grade stone. So you get chips in the second grade stone. If you want to use grade 1 stone, it's much better. And for doing lettering, you should use grade 1 stone. But you can't get the grade 1 stone of this in Ireland anymore because the quarry, which is in Kilkenny, there's plenty of grade 1 stuff there, but it was bought by a load of Belgians. Do you hear that? Deranged. I know you're Dutch, you're not Belgian. Sorry. But it was bought by some Belgians, and they're raping the quarry, and they said all the best stone that they pull out of it to Belgium and they won't sell it to the Irish. It drives me mad. You ring them up and say, I need grade 1 stone. And they say, sorry, can't have it. We send it all to Belgium. That's my rant. So anyway. So I'm not carving it into the highest quality stone. Clean up the centres of it. Now, right, so I've got this little mistake here. So what I'll just do is I'll just try and carve it out. So I've just made this little loop here at the end, just so it's slightly wider, just to hide that little error. And here I'm just shaving the stone wool. I'm not cutting it as such. I've done all the cutting. I'm just shaving it here, trying to blend my lines, try and get nice smooth lines. But this is also difficult. I'm working in my own shadow here because I should be doing this during the daylight. So I'm working in my own shadow, which is a bit useless. And then just chase my way up there to tidy up the thing. And then we've got a little plane in here we need to make. Now, am I happy with that? Not really. I can't really see the fine details because it's too dark. It's too dark and there's too many shadows. There we go, that's two bits of the leather. Now, let's do the upright. So, we go from the very tip of the serif, very fine, we go into the letter, we go to the deepest point, and we come out, and we come out to the very end. Now, I've gone a bit too far on that serif, or I've taken it going round. I've made it go round. I don't care. That's one of the things. Lettering is it's a perfectionist pursuit. Doing lettering, you're always seeking for perfection, but you never get perfection. And that is the beauty of it. Because there'll always be some error, there's always something that's not quite right. You can only ever get close, you can never reach it. What a load of old waffle. Right, let's take one of these corners of these chisels is a bit blunt. So, I've chased up my fire break. One of these corners was broken off the chisel, so it's not carving properly. That happens especially because this is in a hard stone. So that's my fire break. Now I chop up just inside the line. Remove the waste. I hope you can see that. I'm just removing the waste. So here's the point where I'm cutting up through the thin stroke. So I've been chopping. I get to the thin stroke. And to stop that thing bursting, I have to turn the chisel over into it. And then I can work my way out again. And again, it doesn't matter how messy these lines are. As long as you're within the line, it's fine. All you're doing is removing waste. There's no getting away from this. I've got to get in the way here to do this. That's my blunt bit. I'll try and keep my head out of the way at the very least. I might fluff this up because I'm not in a comfortable position. Just trying to make it so you can see. So I'm chopping my way out there. I'm well inside the line here. I'm being super safe. But that's because I'm not So that's a bit of a mess really, but that's because I'm not in a comfortable position. It doesn't matter. Round that out. Now this is right, I've got to get it in the way. You see, normally I'd be right over here for this. Right, that's pretty crap really. Too high. Swearing in Ireland is common as a cup of tea. Common as a cup of tea. Right, now I've got my sharp chisel and we'll try and refine now. Try and get something. Okay, that's done that side. Now that side, so that's starting to come out a bit. Now, right, I'm going to have to just get in the way because I'm in my own shadow as well. It's kind of impossible really. Now, so I haven't finished this yet by any means, but already, right, this is what I see about how, again, we're in refinement. So I'm looking at my R now, you know, and I've carved out and I'm kind of close to my lines, and I'm thinking, right, this bowl, this counter is too big. It's too fat, it's too top heavy in that R. You know, if you look at it, you can see it. It looks worse on the video because of the angle, but that's too fat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to widen this stroke a bit here to take a bit off this side, and I'm going to probably just take a bit more off the inside there, and we'll just try and make that counter look a bit more pleasing to the eye. I'm completely disregarding my lines that I've drawn now. I'm making these final passes by eye. Now that's my son. He's just turned up in his bloody tractor. He's going to come in here and disturb me. Typical. Didn't want anyone to come and disturb me. So. Try and take this, and this is why when I was doing this counter I hadn't gone to my lines, because I didn't want to go to my lines, it was too early, because I needed to see this upright and how the upright affected it. Now I'm going to pause my video because I don't want Tig to come in here. I hope I can pause. I know. Oh yeah, there is a pause. Right, I told him to bog off, and thankfully it worked. But my pause worked. A little bit of a slight worry. So let's make this counter smaller. Let's make this a little bit. And this is the advantage of putting the paint on the stone. If I hadn't got the paint on the stone, this wouldn't have been so obvious, because I wouldn't be able to see the lines that I've carved anywhere near as well. Now, here we go. now, let's just go up a little bit. Let's take another little slither off here. So again, I'm kind of only really shaving it. Now. So, it's still a little big. But what I'm going to do now is, again, because I'm just constantly making judgments, and because this is the first letter that I'm doing, I'm not following this to match other letters. It doesn't matter how thick or thin I make these strokes, as long as I get something looking how I want it to look. So let's thicken up this upright a little bit. It's so easy because I can't see what I'm doing. See, and this is the thing with lettering, because everything affects everything else. By making this stroke slightly wider, it makes that counter look slightly smaller. You know, it's you constantly have to be using your eyes, making judgments. And the hardest thing, and the hardest thing is, you know, it's quite easy to see what the problem is. So I could see that the counter was too big. It's not so easy seeing what's causing that. So if this was a whole word, let's say this said geek questions, and I'm carving away and I'm doing the K, or if, you know, normally I carve backwards actually, but let's say I'm doing the K, and the K, and something isn't right with that K. It just doesn't look quite right. It could be, the problem could be with the U, 3 letters before it. Do you know? It's easy to see the problem, but it's not easy to see what's causing that problem. It could be the Q, it could be the E next to it. You know, geek, I mean, there isn't a U before the K. It could be one of the E's before the K, or maybe it's the T in the questions that's causing the problem with the K. It's a funny, there's no absolutes in lettering, that's why it's such an art. It's a real true finicky art. And you know, I'm no master, but I know that is anyone a master of lettering? Because even the masters still have lots to learn. We've always got lots to learn. There's always something to learn. No one knows it all. And hidden secrets. You know, and what looks right to one person doesn't look right to another person. It's a funny little field now. Now, it's just always interesting. These lines here, you know, this is coming down here, and it's not quite straight, it's ever so slightly wasted here, and like I said, entasis, flare, comes down, and then it goes. So it's not coming in here and bending round from here. It goes up, he goes up, hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it, and then it goes right at the end. That's what makes a really nice letter. Oops, and I dropped my pencil and I've broken the lead. So now I'm just trying to really work on this final little curve. No. And I can see here that I'm a long way away from my line there, but that's because I've come in, I went further in this way. Now, that's kind of it really. Now, am I happy with that? Am I happy with it? No, of course I'm not happy with it, because you never are. And it's difficult because I can't see. And I could fiddle around probably for hours trying to get it just right. And normally, because I'm taking my time here and trying to explain things, this process would be quite quick, I'd probably bang this letter out in 10 minutes, drawn and carved in 10 minutes. So, now, I could make all that better, but that'll do for now, because geez man, this video's been going for almost an hour. Who's still watching? Nobody is still watching. Nobody is still watching. But it's better than watching something crap on the telly, isn't it? At least it's, it's an interesting documentary. So I've done that. Now, see, now I can get rid of everything around it. That's all got orange paint inside it now. Just wash this out a bit. So let's get rid of all that paste of paint. Right, and just at this instant, while it's wet, I can see a few little lumps in my lines. Just try and tidy it all up a bit. So again, constantly refining. Every stage I'm refining again, just trying to sort things out. I'm not, this is a poor line, but I can't, because I can't get in it, I can't do it properly. So that's going to be a poor line. You have to accept that. So when you see it finalised, how's that looking on the thing? That looks alright actually, right, let's just stick a heat gun on it. Dry it off. I've got all this, my camera's all set up on this really dodgy setup and some ladders. So, that is the R. Now, I've just unplugged my phone because it's charging up because the battery only lasts about 10 minutes. Right, where are we? There is my R. Hang on, let me get a pencil and see if I can hold this on. A bit wobbly, wibbly wobbly because I'm doing this. That's my R. You can see this line here is not very good. But you can see how the shadows play. That's why you do V-cut lettering. And this isn't the best R I've ever done by any means, but that is how to cut a letter R. Now, just to show, I had a couple of bits. Look, this is on slate. This is, you can see the that's freshly, well, it's not freshly cut, but that's the difference between the cut. That's an old snooker table. It's slate, but you can see the cut is different to the stone, so I wouldn't need to put paint on that. And you can see here, come back. This is my master. This was my master alphabet that I did. So you can see again that the fresh cut is slightly different to it, and again you can kind of see the shadows on it, but the quality of the picture is awful. So, God, am I going to put myself? So, goodbye and thank you. I hope you enjoyed that. Probably not, but I'll put it up and I'll put it on Matt's Tales from the Emerald Isle. Goodbye, maybe I'll make another one. That's my tester. See you later.